He is a former Navy SEAL, and he is a best-selling New York Times national best-selling author. He is Jack Carr. His brand new book, which I hold in my hands, is The Devil's Hand. It is, of course, the latest in the James Reese series, and he joins us now. Mr. Carr, great to hear from you again. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I sincerely appreciate it.
And, of course, your first book, The Terminal List, it's in production right now. Chris Pratt is playing Reese in that. And is that going to be a series, or is that going to be a feature film through Amazon? How's that working?
That's right. So it's going to be an 8-part series for Amazon, and I guess if if it does well, then there'll be another season, which will be the second book, True Believer. And if not, maybe we just get these 8 episodes for the first season. But I just got back from the set about a week ago. I was there for 5 days, and Chris is absolutely crushing it. Antoine Fuqua is directing, who did Training Day and Tears of the Sun, Magnificent Seven, The Equalizer. Just a fantastic human being. And there's 350 people out there on that set working and making this thing happen. So, so it was impressive.
I mean, that book, all of your books are pretty expansive, wide open. They said this one is no different. Devil's Hand spans the world. There's a lot of different locations, and there's an incredible amount of action. So, that's going to be a big budget, big personnel kind of adventure, I would think.
It is. And I was really impressed with just how much they want to keep the darkness, the grittiness, the realism, just how primal and violent the books are. They really want to stay true to that. And Chris optioned this first one right out of the gate. So before the first novel even came out, he optioned it. Antoine wanted it too, and they teamed up to do it together. So it was really cool just how much care and effort they're taking with the guns, with the gear, the knives, the way the characters talk to one another out on set. It was a SEAL reunion out there because we had about 12 SEALs that I worked with in the SEAL teams. They're either playing SEALs or they're acting in it or they're doing stunt coordination or technical advising. And so we had a great time out there on set. It was like a SEAL reunion out there. But
that's pretty cool.
So right, they send me they send me pictures of the car, the James Reese's Land Cruiser, and said, "Hey, is this right?" And I said, "Well, it looks right. It's the right year, but the wheels are too modern. Can we get those changed?" And then Antoine goes off and gets them changed, and it looks awesome now.
Wow! So you're really getting. I mean, it truly is your vision being made onto film. That's got to be so rewarding for you. By the way, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's several years ago since you wrote The Terminal List. People should read it before watching the film, but a lot of it takes place in Coronado, the headquarters of the SEALs. Were you on location there, or did they have to recreate it somewhere else?
Well, the Navy was less than helpful in supporting this project. I think.
Well, considering what happens to the Admiral in that book, I don't blame them.
Exactly. I said, well, I totally understand because, I do blow an Admiral up with an SS in his office. So I kind of get it. So, the military is not supporting this project. So they're making those they're figuring that out and going to other locations, still in Southern California, but not the exact.
Well, that does bring us to Devil's Hand because, James Reese has been through quite a journey here. And when he starts out, you're right to emphasize the grittiness here because he goes through some really dark stuff in your books to get to the point where he is in Devil's Hand, right?
That's right. So the first one really is all about revenge without constraint. His family's taken from him. His SEAL troop is taken from him. He's sucked into this conspiracy, which involves the testing of drugs on our nation's most elite soldiers. And it is a very dark book. The next one, True Believer, is really a story of redemption where he has to transition and learn to live again, find that next mission in life, kind of like we all do when we have transitions. And then the third one, Savage Son, it really explores the dark side of man through the dynamic of hunter and hunted.
Yeah.
And then this fourth one explores something I thought about a lot while I was in the SEAL teams, and I continue to think about today as an author and a citizen, which is what has the enemy learned by watching us on the field of battle for the last 20 years at war? If I was Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, a superempowered individual, a terrorist organization, what would I have learned by essentially watching the United States play poker, look at our cards, see how we play those cards? What would I have taken from that and then applied to my future battle plan? So that formed the basis of it. And then, of course, 2020 became such a pivotal year because I did the outline in August of 2019. But because I'm in the enemy's shoes, they're learning from our response to COVID. They're learning from our response to the civil unrest of the summer. They're learning about us from a very contentious political season and what seems to be irreconcilable differences on that front. And they're incorporating all of that into their battle plan. So the book became much more timely than I thought when I originally outlined it.
Well, I was going to ask you, the bioweapons part of the book, again, not giving too much away, but there is an angle there. Was that already sort of in your mind before COVID-19, or did you sort of bring that in because you knew it would resonate with the reader?
No, I outlined it in August of 2019 on my way to and from Russia, doing a little bit of research for my last novel. I had to go to just south of Siberia to Kamchatka Peninsula, so I left behind my computer and my phone for security reasons, because who knows what people have sent me over the years, and I didn't want Russian intelligence sucking all that information out. So I outlined the whole thing on a notepad, and when I got back, I incorporated some of that local flavor into my third novel, and then I started researching The Devil's Hand. So all throughout last fall, I was researching bioweapons and the weaponization of infectious diseases, the history really from World War II up through today. What did the Japanese do in World War II? What did the Germans do? Where did that data and research go after the war? And the answer went into the bioweapons programs of the Soviet Union and the United States. What does being signatories to conventions in the 70s on bioweapons mean for us? So I was doing all that research, and then COVID hit. So it was in the works well before before COVID became such a pivotal
right.
disease and pandemic in the history of the world.
And James Reese, again, if anybody's read these books, the series, Jack Carr's great series, starting with the Terminal List. As I said, James Reese has been through hell, and he's been through quite a bit. You're right; he goes through great redemption, and he's sort of settling in now. And do you feel like now this character is sort of in a zone, right? It's like now you've got all the baggage sort of cleaned up, and now he's sort of in a zone where he can really explore all of these other ideas that you've got that aren't necessarily quite as personal, I guess.
Yeah, so that's the real question. So there's a few things unresolved, and really the key to these is you write and have enough resolution where the reader who has spent so much time engrossed in the novel or listening to it on audiobook feels like so that they have that resolution. But you also want them to get that next book, kind of like you want them to turn to the next page of the chapter. So there's a couple outliers out there that and I'm in the middle of the book 5 right now, and that one goes back to being a lot more personal.
Well, and you also you have to bear in mind also that this might be, and it would work. It stands alone. Devil's Hand might be their very first James Reese book, and you got to accommodate that as well.
That's right. So I came up with a very interesting tool, I thought, to kind of give the backstory. And I got to go back in my head to when I was worked for the CIA as a military. I was attached to the CIA in 2006, and it was a very interesting time to be attached to that organization downrange in Baghdad. So I did a polygraph, a lifestyle polygraph, which is like a 2-day thing hooked up to this machine. And I got to go back and revisit some of those feelings and emotions behind being hooked up to that thing and apply those to the novel as a tool in order to bring readers up to speed who might not have read the first 3.
Wait, so that's a real thing that the CIA does? I just thought you were using it as a literary device.
Nope, I was in that chair in the most uncomfortable room on the planet. So at the time, though, of course, I wasn't taking notes for a future novel. I was just going through the process. But I still remember what it felt like in that room. I remember what it looked like. I remember where the polygrapher sat. And then I did my research, of course, in preparation for writing that chapter, and jumped onto different articles and those sorts of things to incorporate some of the history of the polygraph, which is, of course, the quote unquote lie detector machine.
Yeah. Given the fact that The Devil's Hand really does have this look back 20 years in the rearview mirror to September 11th, and given the fact that that is literally in the news this week with regard to our activities in Afghanistan, Jack Carr, you were either the luckiest writer or I'm the luckiest radio host that I get to pick your brain about that, because what I love about you is this, and we'll talk about your books, and I can talk about your books for hours, but I also want to talk to you about what's going on in the real world right now, because you don't hold back. So can you stick with us, and we'll talk about your time in Afghanistan, your reflection on the announcement from the president, and more with regard to our national security?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Excellent. Jack Carr sticks with us. We got a little bit more to talk about James Reese as well, and I want to know about Chris Pratt, whether he's in better shape now as a SEAL than he was for a Guardian of the Galaxy. That's important. I have known Katie Pavlich over at townhall.com and Fox News for, about 8 or 9 years now, and I'm a columnist at Town Hall as well. We're colleagues over there, so I consider her a friend. I have never been more jealous of a friend than I am of Katie Pavlich, because she gets to go out shooting with you, Jack Carr. How did this happen? How do I get in on this list? I'll be shameless. I want an invite.
I mean, probably able to work something out there. Katie and I have been friends for a long time, and for about a decade or so. And it was interesting. She was on the 5 the other night, and it was so cool of her to bring up the book, and they put pictures on the screen and the whole deal. It was just too cool. But what was even crazier is that I was on Joe Rogan podcast at the time talking about her book, Fast and Furious, about the ATF and the Obama scandal. And so at the same time, we were talking about each other's works on different programs. So it's fantastic.
Well, I love that you read that book. I've got it right on my shelf, actually, right on the shelf right below where I've got the Jack Carr books. Actually, that's hilarious. And I wanted to ask you about that. Obviously, as a SEAL and you can tell when you're writing that you have great respect and honor for firearms and the right to bear in America. And given that, I mean, the latest proclamations from the president and what they're trying to get done, maybe not even through legislation, just executive orders, it does diminish that Second Amendment right that we have, and I'd love for you to react to that, considering what the government itself has done in the past, like with Fast and Furious and such. It's not like they're the most responsible with firearms.
It's their arguments are so disingenuous, and they can take advantage of an electorate that doesn't take the time to take a breath and study their history. For a lot of us, anyway, or a lot of people that are voters, they get their information from a single tweet from someone else who also has not put in the requisite time, energy, and effort to studying these issues. And the decisions that we make today, and the decisions that our elected officials are making supposedly on our behalf, are going to affect our children, their children, all these future generations. And we owe it to those people who, from the inception of this country up until today, sacrificed everything so we could have these freedoms and these options and opportunities. And now social media in particular, a bunch of other factors have made it a lot easier for our elected politicians, our employees, to grab power and control that they will never give back to us. And gun control falls into that category. And it's sad to see.
No. It's not gun control anymore, Jack. It's common sense gun safety measures. See, I don't know if you didn't get that memo.
Of course. Oh, yeah. No, I used that in a couple novels, especially that first one where you label something disingenuously just to sound like it's so nice and common sense and all the rest of it. But when in reality, it's a power grab, and it's always about control.
By the way, that was my favorite part of Terminal List, and I don't watch because obviously Hollywood does stuff with stories and stuff, but in my mind, the antagonist, the evil character in that book it really reminded me of the Democrats' presidential candidate back in 2016. It made me laugh every time you painted this picture, and her husband.
It must be just a coincidence.
Yeah, just a coincidence. Jack, listen, the president today or this week announced that really he extended the war. The headlines are all that we're ending the war on September 11th. Trump already announced that we were going to pull out of Afghanistan the first week of May. So really he's extending it to September 11th. First, just sort of your reflection. As a former Navy SEAL, you served in Afghanistan. Do you think this is the right move in general, but also more specifically, do you think that it's a move rooted in victory?
Well, just to go back to what you just said, I saw a very insightful meme today, and it said that organized crime, they're just politicians on it. They're just honest politicians. Is all that said, which certainly resonated. And of course, what politicians do, if something was a good policy from a previous administration, they will take credit for it. And if it was not, then of course they'll blame the previous administration for it. That's just how it goes. And that's one of the parts of writing these characters that I don't necessarily have a touch point with, or I don't have some sort of a connection to, like politicians. I just can't imagine going into something like that. I mean, my hat's off to those that do it for the right reasons, but oh my gosh, there's such an opportunity there to get the wrong people in the right places to exercise so much control over the electorate. It's staggering. But when we talk about Afghanistan, so we have been there for 20 years, coming up on 20 years. We've seen shifting goal lines. We've stayed there without being able to articulate exactly why we are still there, what we are still doing there. If the point of being there is to keep the enemy off balance, the same way that a SWAT team would in any big city in America and has been doing since the late 60s up until tonight, you can do that till the end of time. But now we have 20 years worth of data to look back and to evaluate and to inform our decisions going forward. So that's really what we owe all those people who sacrificed their lives down there, who came back with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress, the emotional and physical trauma of the battlefield, is to look at that data in order to make good decisions going forward. So I think, I think it's time to to probably wrap things up over there and come home, but take those lessons and realize that, hey, the world has changed a little bit over these last 20 years. And what you maybe needed to do in 2000 or 1999 or even 2001, you don't necessarily need today. You don't need to physically be in a location with someone to plan an attack. You can do that in the virtual realm. Yeah. And we also have to remember that September 11th, the idea for September 11th was hatched in the Philippines. Yes, it was probably approved in Afghanistan, but then where was it really planned? Oh, Hamburg, Germany, San Diego, California, Phoenix, Arizona, all these other places that weren't in Afghanistan. So we have to look at that, realize the world has changed, and then tailor our mission going forward in order to adapt to that changing environment. That's really the key.
Finally, Jack, and we're speaking with Jack Carr, author of The Devil's Hand, which is out this week. He's a New York Times best-selling author and a former Navy SEAL. And in that perspective, so much in the news right now about changing culture at the Pentagon. A lot of people are criticizing potentially changing priorities. You served, obviously, and obviously you have I think it's fair to say you're very proud of your service and you're proud of the military, but you clearly point out some things that are not quite right about the military through your books. What would you give if somebody came to you right now? They're 20 years old. They want to join up. They want to go through OCS and be an officer or an enlisted. Would you encourage them to do so, given the military that we have today? I should rephrase that, actually. Given the leadership we have today, given what's going on in the Pentagon with the generals, et cetera.
No, that's exactly right. And you can take that one step further and change it to, hey, would you encourage your children to go into the military? Or if they wanted to go into the military, what would you say to them? How would you advise them going forward? And that is such a tough question, looking at it from the outside in now. The main point of the military is obviously to be prepared for war. So when that call comes, then you go to war and you crush. So if there is anything that distracts from that mission, then it shouldn't even be a part of the calculus. Does this make us a stronger military? Does this prepare us for war? And if it's like, no, that is a distraction, then kick that to the curb and get back to the business of being prepared for war.
And some of the priorities you're seeing right now out of this Pentagon, you don't think that's the primary focus?
Yeah, but it's not just this Pentagon. I mean, I saw that during my time in uniform as well, particularly in the last 10 years, I would say, of my 20 years. And when you get these senior level military leaders who are essentially politicians in uniform, not all of them, but a lot of them see the person that's retired a couple ranks ahead of them. They have a couple years to go. This person's on the board at, let's say, Boeing or Raytheon or General Dynamics, making quite the paycheck for showing up to 1 or 2 meetings a year. And then all of a sudden that contract comes across the desk. I mean, what do? Do you sign that thing hoping to get on that board as well? Well, Eisenhower did warn about the military-industrial complex, and people are very familiar with that term, but people should watch the entire video, entire speech, and then read that entire speech as well. It's fascinating. But that's a real thing. That is a real thing in the military. And we have politicians in uniform that want that next rank and know that doing certain things to appease or impress a certain administration might help them get that next star. That is a real thing. Not everybody, but enough to have it impact the readiness of the force.
All right, I lied. I'm not just jealous of Katie Pavlich. I'm jealous also of Joe Rogan, because he can just turn on the mics and there's no deadline and there's no weather and he can just talk and talk and talk, and I wish I could do that, but Jack Carr, we are out of time. Please come back, especially when it's, this is the first week. I don't want to give spoilers. Maybe in a month or so, we can maybe do a longer interview and we can get into some of the details in The Devil's Hand. It's a great read. It really is, and congratulations on it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on, and look forward to coming back and talking with you soon.